Okay, now let's go back onto the logistics. This is the bog standard stuff, and I'm going to try to whiz through this because you probably know a lot of this stuff anyway. First thing, the room. Make sure it's a good, light, airy room. I think small, rooms with no lights don't help. Often we need breakout rooms. If you do have breakout rooms, make sure they're not half a mile away, because you then waste so much time trying to bring people back in. If it's a big enough room, you may be able to just sort of break them off and that stuff like that. I think attendees is really important. The quality of the workshop is going to be very much dependent upon who actually comes in. So I think there's something like, you don't want too many. Maybe 12 is about the ideal number. Once you get to 25, forget it. And you've got to have a diversity of points of view in that room. You've got to have not all one type of people. You do need to have a few different types of diverse thinkers from their experience to come into that space. So you can obviously, as I always talk about, the truth has multiple dimensions and multiple sides. And the only way we're going to really understand what the truth is if we have the opportunity to look at it from different angles. And likewise, you want to really invite people less on politics. I appreciate you're never going to get completely free of that, but more upon, are they going to add value into the room? I don't like people to come into the room who just sit there and don't say anything. I want them to be there and to take part. And if you've got certain people who don't do that, then maybe you can suggest there are better, uses of their time. Now, you need a really clear agenda, because a lot of the work for a workshop is done before the workshop. I'd say half of it, because as I said in the first part, a lot of it is what you're doing in the room, on your surfboard. But actually, very clearly, what are the steps you're going to slowly take people through to get to the outcome? And I think what you've got to do is you've got to agree that with your problem owner, maybe some of the key stakeholders, so everyone is aligned on that. And when you come into the room, take them through the steps. Make sure it's on the table so there isn't the anxiety. Where are we going with this? I don't understand what the process is. People need to understand that. And as I said before, you've got to remember that it's a guide, and you've got to be flexible, and every now and again something happens, and in consultation with the problem owner, you can sort of say, look, let's park the agenda right now. Let's come over here, because this seems to be where the air energy of the room is right now. As regards, very often when we run these, there's some information we need to do work on. And I think there's something about, you've got to be careful you don't give too much information. Our decision-making process is very much about overcomplicate it, and we reduce the quality of our decision-making. So actually, you've got to make sure you put real, the most important stuff, and you strip away all the unimportant stuff. So there's a lot of work beforehand upon what are the key slides going to be shared. Honestly, my experience with, we'll do this all in pre-reading, it doesn't happen. So I do think you've got to bring the key information at the time into the room. And I think the key information needs to be up on the walls as well, so people can constantly reference to it rather than just someone just talking about it. I also think that when you're designing this, and you design the steps, less is more. There's something really powerful about the discussion, and the reflection is where the work really happens. And that's both inside the main plenary, but it's also within those breakout groups. I think having stimulus is really important, be it the Play-Doh on the desks and some Post-its and things like that. But the more that you can somehow engage their more sort of creative side of the brain, the more you're going to actually change the way they are seeing things and thinking about things. Because very often they've used a rationality to get to where they are. And right now, we need to find a new way, a new path to get through to what their solution is going to be. I always like to have, for example, up on the walls, lots of quotes, because I like the inspiration, and I'm often drawing upon those when I'm running these things. The other thing is I always like to have someone who's scribing, because I find that if I'm scribing, my handwriting is appalling, and I'm trying to pay attention to what the room is, and I'm thinking where the agenda's going, it's almost like means I'm doing none of the jobs properly. And I want to be absolutely there with the people and have someone who is going to be doing the writing. That's me. Likewise, I think we need to have a timekeeper. I think it's really important on these things. I appreciate meetings always start late, but people always want them to end exactly on time. And you've really got to honour and respect people's time. So literally you do have someone in the back of the room saying 5 minutes, you know, there's a bell that goes on the phone so you can pull things together. You know, that is where you're going to keep people being entrusted in that process. Now, icebreakers, I've got mixed views about this. You've got to remember, very often, if you've got quite some senior people in the room, they've got a sort of image to go and maintain, and they don't really want to be jumping through a hula hoop and doing things like that. So choose icebreakers that are appropriate for the audience. Now, I come on to breakouts within a minute, but you know, sometimes you get lots of people doing lots of ideas and you get into voting. I quite like sort of voting. It helps to cut stuff down. In the ideal world, I'd always love to do more of a sort of different people arguing for different solutions and getting that. Very often we don't seem to have the time. But voting, very often putting ticks upon the things they really like. So I love to have all the post-its up on the wall, all the breakout group, you know, presentation notes up on the wall, and people can go around and pick on stuff and say what they really liked, you know, what didn't work for them. That's really useful. And obviously the most important thing is you've got to have clear action steps. You've got to have a who, when, where, why, you know. So at the end of it, you've got to put time in, like, so let's agree, what's the key action points? When's that going to happen? Who is going to do it? You know, and then we walk away from that, and then very often, very quickly after, I always recommend within 24 hours, 48 hours, there is a printout of that. Maybe the other notes can come later on, but the most important thing is the action sheet that makes sure that things take place outside of the meeting, because you've got to pick up upon the momentum. And then obviously for yourselves, you've got to be thinking about constant and never-ending improvement. You've got to reflect what worked well, what didn't go so well, even better if, have feedback forms, conversations with the problem owner about it. So therefore you hone your skill. This isn't just you know, trust me, managing these and facilitating these workshops are not an easy thing. Now let's talk about breakout groups, because I think it's really quite important that we do breakout groups. When you've got quite a lot of people, you need to maybe get them to either do everyone doing the same topic, or else you give different topics to different people, you know. But I think there's something about assigning people. You can waste a lot of time in these meetings, like, oh, well, who's going to go with them? And then you get favoritisms and nonsense like that. I think working with the problem owner, who's going to go in which team, and a bit like this sort of, you know, the wedding tables, they know better than you who gets on well, who jibes well with another person. And I think there should be mixed abilities. So there should be a senior person. There should be some more junior people if they're in the room as well. And I think also you've got to assign who is the leader. I always want to have someone who's going to be project managing that little breakout team. You may change it as you go through the day, but aside, right, I want you, John, to go and lead this. Maybe you have to have some pre-briefing sessions with them beforehand. And maybe you say, and I'd like to have Sarah to go and do the feedback. So you're not wasting a lot of time. You know, and I think there is, you know, a need for, when you go those breakouts, to have a clarity of requirement. You know, write it down. So when they go in their breakout rooms, they've got the piece of paper. Exactly what are the requirements? And for me, give them a template to fill in, because then it makes it really easy. And likewise, you've got to put proper time into that. All too often I see that, okay, you've got 10 minutes. And by the time they've got to the room, they're settled down, they've gone through the normal sort of, you know, initial bit of discussion, of just getting to know each other. They've run out of time. So you've got to make sure you give them a proper amount of time. This always takes longer than you first think. And basically, and wander around, you know, are you all clear? Do you know what's going on? There's often a lot of anxiety about performance here, and they often ask questions, so you can put them at ease about that stuff. And like I say, keep it to time, you know, have timing notes. Hi guys, you've got another 15 minutes left, you've got another 5 minutes left. Okay, could you come back in the room in a minute's time? That's all really important stuff. So just to conclude, There are two big parts about facilitating workshops. There's all the logistics I've just talked about, but the most important is the people. And the people is two parts. It's them in the room and managing them and managing their safety and managing their trust. And there's you and how you come across and how you facilitate that space. Anyway, I hope that helps. Clearly, you know, if you want any workshops to be facilitated, or if you want to actually attend my workshop to learn how to do this, I'm open. Thanks for your time.